moving on to let's talk about the whole fiasco, right? Let's talk about the Devin Haney beating Jose Ramirez, Ryan Garcia losing to Rolly Romero, right? So Devin and Ryan were supposed to be on this collision course, and to tell you the truth, they still are, right? They're still gonna fight because it's the big money fight,
Right.
But Rolly comes in there and Rolly upsets Ryan Garcia. So now after that, do you think it's fair that Devin and Ryan still fight, or do you think Rolly should have been inserted in the mix to fight Devin?
I think the most logical choice is to have Rolly in the mix. I would say not logical. I would say the fairest thing to do was to have Rolly in the mix to fight Devin, right? Have him be a part of that, that trio there. But understanding the context and the story behind Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia, I do think, and I'm going to use this term appropriately this time, I do think it's more logical to have Ryan Garcia versus Devin Haney, because I do think it's unfinished business there, right? Especially we're factoring the Osterine, the drug test, the failing to make weight, the upset that Ryan gave to Haney, how bad he beat him, the lawsuit. There's a story there, right? So I think that is probably the most logical choice to make. Now, whether or not most people will want to see it now compared to after the Fatal Fury card, maybe, right? I do think most people will probably still tune in, but it's not going to have the same traction as it did. So
yeah. So both Ryan and Devin had lackluster performances, right? So I do think you're right. Some of the momentum for the fight has gone in the opposite direction, not the correct direction. But like you said, the history of the drama, I think once we get back close and press conferences start, it'll build it back up. But I want to ask, what do you separately, individually, what do you attest both of their lackluster performances to? So Devin Haney gets the win, but when you saw him versus Jose Ramirez, and most people have been disappointed with the performance. He's being ridiculed. Maybe you're not ridiculing him, but I'm just saying, like, what did you see in his performance that may have been lacking in your personal opinion?
I think obviously the activity. When he was fighting Ramirez, you can tell he's a bit antsy. I think that's obvious to everyone. You can tell he really wasn't trying to take any chances, and he was just really trying to get a win by any means possible, even if it means really just being inactive, just, hit, not get hit, get up out of there, kind of different than what William Skull employed in the Canelo fight. William Skull was really just trying to survive. Whereas with Devin Haney, I felt like, all right, you know what? Let me just tag him and just get up out of there. You know what I mean? And he was just trying to just get the win. Like he really was just trying to get the win and not take any damage. And also it can probably be in part due to, the effects of the Ryan Garcia fight, right? Not even potentially even looking to get touched or get touched flush where he risked himself going down. Maybe he didn't trust his chin. That may be a part of it. Now, when we're talking about Ryan Garcia, I think Ryan Garcia felt Rolly's power when he got dropped. And Rolly, of course, outboxed Ryan. We all seen it. But when Rolly had that right hand stuck right to his face and took away the left hand, Ryan didn't have anything else. You had Derek James screaming in the corner, use your right hand, go to the right, begging him to use his right. And he just didn't want to take that chance. You could tell that Rolly's power was keeping him at bay. And that's the reason for his lackluster performance, in my opinion.
Well, you know what Rolly was also doing? He employed the tank tactic where he kept touching that left hand. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it almost like you can gauge it, right? Because now if we're not in contact, it's free game. That left hand is probably coming out, but he kept just touching the left hand to like neutralize it. I thought that was a very smart tactic from Rolly's standpoint.
It was, and that's and it's crazy because if Ryan would have threw the right hand, that tactic would have never worked. Because if you go back and watch Rolly when he fought Pitbull, he kind of did the same with Pitbull, but Pitbull was throwing lefts and right bombs, and it just wasn't, you know what I mean? Whereas Ryan Garcia is clearly just Captain Hook, like left hook, can't throw the right, and also he was scared of what was coming back too.
Yeah,
so
I do believe the power was real from Rolly. Rolly said he feels good at 147. He looked fast, right? It didn't. He looked fast. He looked strong. So maybe he was depleted at the lower weights, as he's been alluding to. But I agree, Ryan definitely was hesitant by the power, because Ryan's. We all know the left hook's his best punch, but we've
Right.
seen Ryan use the right hand in the past, and
Yes.
this fight is just like he just wasn't willing. So excellent tactic by Rolly, and I was even before this fight, I was kind of on the record of questioning Rolly, like, hey, maybe is he better with Bullet than Ismael Salas? Obviously, Ismael's a superior trainer, right? But I was like, just does Bullet mesh more with Rolly's style? And I think no, I think he's good with Ismael. I think maybe the Pitbull fight was bad matchup wise. Rolly said he was weight drained and just Pitbull style, right? Maybe he needed to fight Wild with Wild that night, and he didn't.
Yeah,
So
I
I
actually
mean,
agree with that. I actually think Bullet would have probably been better for Pitbull than, and styles makes fights,
yeah.
right? Like, and my question to you is, do you think it had more to do with Ismail, like his new coach, or maybe just him being familiar with Ryan, right? From those years of sparring him, and do you think that had more to play than anything else?
So I do think the familiarity played a factor, right? I think that made him confident. Similar to what I said, if we were to rewind it, it'd be hard to find the footage now, but if you guys been following us this whole time, I was telling everyone the Riot and Devin fight is going to be closer than people think. At the
Mhm.
time, Devin came off of dominating Regis program. People were even saying he's probably going to stop Ryan. And
Yeah,
remember, I
you
was
did say
like,
that.
no, 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 no. I said, this is
You
going to be a
definitely did say
close
that.
fight. These guys are familiar with one another. They fought six
Facts.
times in the amateurs. So I think the familiarity between Rolly and Ryan gives Rolly confidence. So when Rolly goes in there, he's just like, I don't care. Like, I know the success I've had against you. But
Right.
I do think his trainer, Ismael Salas, weighs more. I think the confidence was great, but I think the game plan even supersedes the confidence. But when you put the two together, then you have a night that, just like what happened, and he just completely neutralizes Ryan Garcia.
Okay. All right.
Now,
All right.
from the Devin Haney standpoint, though, what I think happened with Devin Haney is, I think, is a little bit gun shy, because similar to Ryan, he's a little bit like wary of what's coming back. You know what I mean? Once again, if you guys have been following us along this journey, I was one of the guys who were like, man, I'm so upset every time people say Devin Haney's chin is suspect. Yes, Jorge Linares um, made him do the Bambi walk, right? But after that, it didn't matter. I remember he was fighting Jojo Diaz, and I don't remember Devin Haney being any trouble against Jojo Diaz. But every time Jojo landed something, it's like, oh, Devin may be hurt. I'm like, bro, these dudes is gassing it, bro. I'm like, y'all wilding. I'm like, this dude is fine. But then he
Yeah.
goes on to fight Lomachenko. Lomachenko almost stops him, right?
Almost.
Let's not talk about the outcome of the fight, but there's moments where Lomachenko had him very, very hurt, right? Then you fast forward a couple fights to the Ryan fight, and we see what happened. So I think Devin may internally be questioning his own chin and ability to stand up to some of these punches. So I think he was just playing it extra cautious, like, man, I don't even want to take a hit to find out, if I can tank it or not. The
Yeah.
issue with that, though, I feel like that is Anthony Joshua's problem. Since the Ruiz fight, he's been so like stiff and hesitant, because I feel like it's always weary. Like Joshua always looks like he's overthinking in there, right? Like he doesn't want to take one of those hits. Um, I just don't want to see Devin Haney go down that road, but it could be a possibility, because it starts becoming psychological at a certain point.
Yeah. 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 100%. And one thing I was definitely like when I was watching Devin Haney's fight too, I was curious too to see if he would do the bow and arrow. And long behold, he still was doing the bow and arrow. So
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know if it was just more so he's you know what? I don't really need to focus more on that in this fight, especially if I'm bouncing around left and right and I'm just throwing a jab out there. And maybe he makes the correction for the Ryan Garcia fight. But I
yeah.
don't know, man. That was
So,
kind of a little like,
so
that was a
here,
yellow flag for me.
here's the thing about that, in my opinion. Look at Rolly, right? Rolly, who started boxing at 17, and then he went from Bullet to Ismael Salas, and Rolly's style looks a lot more polished right now, a lot cleaner. But I think it's because he had less time of doing the same thing, right?
Mhm.
So Devin, who's been boxing since he's pretty young, he's been doing that bow and arrow so long. It's like I feel like it's more engraved than someone who's newer to the sport. Like you have a better chance of changing Rolly's style than Devin's because Devin's been doing this for so long. So I'm pretty sure Devin is trying not to do it, but once you kind of like in the middle of something and obviously you're thinking, but you don't have time to slow down and think, you kind of just revert back to old habits. And I think that's just an old habit that he's always had.
You know what I think? I do agree with that, but I think that's what separates the elite high IQ fighters versus those type of fighters. Because I think no matter like how many years you've been doing boxing, you should always be adaptable, right? You should always be able to go through 2 training camps and make the adjustment. You know what I mean? Like we've seen fighters even that we consider lower than Devin Haney, right? And Ortiz Jr., who's able to go into a fight and fight southpaw the whole time and be able to kind of like change up his style stylistically. So if you're not able to at least not stick and not be overzealous with your jab just to get it out there because you're longer, then that's just a lack of discipline, in my honest opinion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to kind of take the hit of I may not reach this guy here as long as my right hand is here, or be able to keep it out here for any trajectories that's coming. You know what I mean? Like it's just maybe he's just not at the level that we anticipated. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's probably the reality.
Yeah.